My science fair experiment is about making and purifying elemental sodium. I initially wanted to experiment with sodium last year when my grade 7 science teacher was talking about the alkali metals and how they were extremely reactive to water. So science fair was the perfect excuse to mess around with sodium. I initially wanted my project to be testing how sodium reacted in other liquids, but getting sodium into the country provided a difficulty, and it ended up being a bit too expensive for too little amount. So I did some more research and I found out that there was a way to make my own sodium out of magnesium powder, which is used in fire starters, and sodium hydroxide, otherwise known as lye, which is used as a drain cleaner. What you have to do to make sodium is put both of those two elements into a metal crucible, put it all into one pile in it, put a wick in it, and put a heavy lid on top of it, depending if it's a cinder block or a brick or some sort of metal lid, depending on how big the crucible is. Then you light the wick, and you have to stand back very far and make sure you have a lot of safety equipment on, because the fire gets very large. Then you have to let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes so that the crucible could cool, because if you were to touch it right after you're done the experiment, it would burn to touch. Then after it's sat for 5 to 10 minutes, you can take off the lid and you'll see some slag left behind. Then the purifying part of it is you have to put 150 milliliters of water in a glass container and 50 milliliters of mineral oil on top of the water. Then you have to drop all the slag from inside the crucible into that mixture, which will make the slag fall all the way down to the water layer. And because there's still some remnants of sodium in it, it will burn up in the water. And because of the density of the sodium, the actual pure sodium will stay in the mineral oil layer. After that's done, you can take the sodium out of the mineral oil layer with tweezers and put it into a small glass container that's filled with mineral oil. And then you can bring it anywhere because it's safe, because it's covered in the mineral oil. My hypothesis says that by taking two common mixtures, lye and magnesium, and introducing a heat as a catalyst, a chemical reaction will happen that allows sodium to be extracted. This experiment did definitely cause a chemical reaction that can be seen by the physical change in the color, the change in smell, and they change in characteristics, the powder to the solid mass. The sodium particles that were removed were separated into two jars because they were most likely were two different materials. The substance that does not have bubbles forming on it is likely sodium, because it is not oxidizing, and if air or water hits sodium, it'll catch on fire. but this one was oxidizing for a while and was putting off bubbles of air, and so that is likely not sodium. My Christian perspective is that the periodic table of elements is the universal catalog of everything. Everything tangible is made of a combination of elements being mixed together in different ways to form very different things. It's amazing that all the things, from people to trees to cars and buildings, are made up of exactly the same elements. In the periodic table, this is the clearest example of God's ordered creation where uniqueness and sameness come together. To sum it all up, this experiment shows that chemical bonds can be broken and reformed to isolate different elements. In this situation, powdered sodium hydroxide plus magnesium were both combined with the intention of breaking and reforming bonds to isolate the sodium. On a molecular level, when the heat is added to this mixture, the atoms vibrate faster, increasing the space between them, resulting in broken bonds between the sodium and hydroxide, and reforming of both between the magnesium and hydroxide, which was supposed to isolate pure sodium. A chemical reaction did occur. Bonds were broken and reformed, however, it did not have the desired effect, possibly due to contaminants. Thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me present.